Hey, John, thanks for joining us today. As a way to get us started, why don't you give us some background on yourself?
Well, morning, Pat. Well, I've been in sales for, I would say, close to 30 years now. I right now currently work for La Mesa RV Sales in the trailer industry and the RV industry and the internet department for the last year. It's exciting. Prior to that, I had my own retail business. And prior to that, I was in the professional hair care business for a startup hair care company called Paul Mitchell and the distributorship that had the ranks with that. So kind of where I've been in sales. I always like to say this, I chose sales as a profession. I didn't just happen to get into it by chance. It was something I went out and did. And then I did every aspect of it.
Absolutely. And why sales for you?
For me, it was really simple. I got a taste of it when I was in high school working for a tire shop. And I liked the fact that nobody could ever really determine how much money I was going to make. Well, it was up to me. So it was never the afraid of not making, it was how much could I make? Some days you make $5 and some days you made $1,500. So it was just the fact that nobody could look at you and go, Pat, $20 an hour. It was up to you, your work, your determination, how long, how much effort you put into, would you get compensated? And for me, it has always been exciting. It's still excited today that it was 30 years ago. It's for me, it's exciting to be able to generate the income that you believe that you're worth, not what somebody else figures you're worth. So it's been fun.
That's incredibly intelligent too. I mean, it's fact how much can you put into it? And if you work, harder than the other guy, you're a person, you're going to make, more money. You're in control of your income, which is important.
One of the best sayings, Pat, I heard a long time ago, and I've never forgotten it, is that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't show up. And what that means to me is along the way in my 20s, I met a lot of super talented guys. They were hip, they were slick, they were cool. But the biggest drawback for salespeople is salespeople tend to be lazy. And what I mean by that is sometimes sales come easy and sometimes you have to work extremely hard for them. So you always got to remember that saying, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't show up. And 99% of the time, the talent people will take the path of least resistance. They won't stay in there and work. So I have met a lot of super talented men and women, and that is the common denominator why somebody is more successful is they're not lazy. And lazy means I'm talking about showing up on time. I'm talking about the follow through. I'm talking about all the things that encompass a sales process from start to finish. You don't forget anything. And I've always remembered that because you will meet super talented people that won't be successful at sales because they haven't learned a good work ethic.
Yeah, absolutely true. I remember early on in my career when I got out of college, or I was actually working through college, I worked for a gentleman by the name of Joseph Barada, and he was an owner of, at that time, 5 or 6 health clubs, Jack LaLanne health clubs in the area in Sacramento. And I worked behind, I was selling memberships, I was selling vitamins and minerals in his health club. And he walked up to me one day and he said, hey, Pat, just some, words of wisdom. It takes as much energy in one day to be successful as it is to be unsuccessful. And he says, I'm going to leave it up to you to decide what you think is more important or where you can spend your time. And so those words always stuck in my mind. It's to your point, if you work hard, it takes as much energy. Why wouldn't you want to work hard and be engaged at all times, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of aspects to sales, right? So people think sales are just customer to customer or customer to business, but there's the initiation, right? There's the first contact, there's the solicitation, there's the information gathering, it's the presentation and the close. Sometimes we kind of focus too much on the close when it's the whole process. And then, like I tell my guests, once I say goodbye to them and shake their hand and they're driving off the curb, I say this to them, I am still the guy that answers my phone after the sale because I'm here not only to represent my company, represent myself, but make sure the customer has a good experience, hopefully get the good review, and then maybe get a repeat customer. So I always say, you don't have to worry about me if I follow through. I'm going to always follow through. And does occasionally something slips through the cracks? Yes. Own up to it. A mistake. And as we get older in life, we realize everybody will make mistakes. It's how you handle them. It's how you address them with the customer, your boss, whomever it is. So there's a lot of aspects, departments, I call them, of the sales process. And what happens is you've got to be good at all of them. You can be strong. You may enjoy some over here, but We all enjoy closing the sale. We all enjoy getting the signature on the contract. But it's all those processes up to there that makes the sales process.
And I know that you've worked a lot in B2B sales, business to business, and you primarily now are, B2C, but business to customer and consumer. That is a tough sell. Being around customers, I mean, just straight on, they are the decision makers. In my field of B2B, we have multiple decision makers. We have multiple, sales cycles, but in your space, your industry, it's business to customer. How do you differentiate yourself?
Well, I think a couple of things, Pat, is that there is a course I took a couple of years ago about having a mindset. And the mindset is this: a neutral mind with a positive expectation. So what does that mean for me? It means I go out there and I want to remember the first impression. Hey, welcome. We're the largest showroom in the United States, indoor showroom. Welcome, meet and greet, make a good first impression. But always understand that I have a plan. Maybe I've had some conversation, maybe some emails, maybe a phone conversation, a text message. So I kind of know what direction to go in there. But I start from the beginning. I assume nothing, that I don't know exactly what they want. If they say something like, well, John, we've already had correspondence, I pick up on that. So I know I should engage further down the conversation. And then what I do is I make the experience good, right? So my business that I had was Total Beauty Experience. There's a bunch of salons, a bunch of retail places you go to, but our experience was going to be better. So I've kind of maintained that. I want to have a good experience with every customer. Does that mean we jive with everybody? Absolutely not. But you have that good, positive expectation experience. And then you just make the whole process more of serving than selling. There's a time to serve, give information, provide, and then there's a time for selling. So it kind of goes in stages. Like we've talked before, every company has a process. Whatever the process is, at LeMace, it's learn the wheel, make a friend, don't talk money, don't talk anything, find out about them. And the old saying, another one, Pat, is people don't care how much you know until they know you care. And I see today that we're going back through and getting what they call empathy, where we're really trying to connect with people. We should have never left that. It should always be that way. And it's no different going to dinner and having a great food server. Does it change how you feel about the taste of the food? No, but it makes the whole experience good. And I think as salespeople, we want to have a good experience when we go with this. So yeah, kind of how the process works.
Empathy has been a big buzzword recently, especially in sales, because a lot of us have lacked that in earlier days. And I believe, with empathy comes curiosity. Salespeople were very curious people. And I think the third piece of that is confidence, confidence, curiosity, and empathy. And those are all great mindsets to have. I see in a lot of reps that I've had experience with, not just newer ones, even with seasoned reps, that, the old adage, always be closing ABC. I think a mindset today is always be listening.
Oh, absolutely.
How important is that in your vertical, in that space that you're in?
Well, you always remember the first time you heard to listen. It's a common saying that a lot of families would say you have two ears and one mouth for a reason. Right. And then you start to realize as you grow in your, life and your world of selling, how you can not be in the moment and be listening when it's really important. So it's always, listen, recommit to the people. So what we're looking for is this or that. Yes, that's correct. So if I don't have this or this, would that be something you wouldn't be open to? And it's letting people know that you really care and you're in the moment, and listening, whether it's business or personal, or even with your managers, people above your bosses, to listen to what they have to say, and then be able to come back and say, wait, you wanted me to do this. This is what I did, this process and this process. I guess it's making the whole cake, right? You have sales, always be closing, be listening, have a plan, make a good first impression. As you look back on it, it has to come together for over years. Very few people you ever meet within the first year of sales will be a polished professional salespeople. They'll have some success. Hopefully they love it, they get the bug, they taste the honey, and they continue to grow on their path of being a much better, not only salesperson, but you probably become a better person in general. You'll have the skill set that you'll learn to get along with anybody under any circumstances, as long as you have the right mental mindset for the outcome that you want.
Right. And when did this light bulb go off in your head about the mindset? Because I agree with you 100%. When did that start creeping into your mind?
When the economy gets tough, right? So I look back through my life, right? 1999, we talked about this at Toastmasters, Y2K, end of the world was coming. Everything was going to crash. Didn't happen. 1994, when I opened my business, worst economy in 30 years. It's going to be the end of the world. My dad sent me the book called Bankruptcy, 1995. It was the end of America. Never happened. So I was able to live through those and see that, yeah, we had some tough times for a while, 2008 housing industry. We're going to go through them some few more times, but just realize that people still make money. People are still successful in tough times. And it's not always the rich people. It's not always the people that have everything going for it. It's a mindset that you go out there and maybe I have to work a little harder. Maybe I have to try a little bit more. Maybe I have to sense I've been at 8 hours, putting 9 or 10 hours in. But I love what I do and I'm going to be good. I represent the company I represent, and I still want to be successful and stay away from the doom and gloomers.
Right.
It's because we have access to, we know exactly when everything bad happens in the world. Very few things are good that they put on the news or they put to your blip on your phone. So it's keeping that mental mindset strong enough where you're not always focusing on what is bad and wrong.
Very important. Good mindset. And if you were, you've been around a lot in your career, a lot of different salespeople. You've worked with them. You've had tons of experiences. You've interacted. What do you see if you were to, put the ingredients into the best salesperson? What makes a good salesperson versus a great salesperson? What are those ingredients?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, I would say good people skills, even though I have to tell you now, good people skills doesn't mean inherently built into your personality. It could be that you turn on a switch and you become that person, but that's not who you are, but you know that you're acting a part in a play or a movie. I rode with a guy who had the most, boring personality, but when he walked into accounts, it was like somebody flipped on the switch and he was dynamic. I thought, who is that guy? And he was
right.
Super successful. And we get in the car and we go to the next stop. And I said to him eventually, I go, Dave, what personality are you? He said, this is who I am. That is just an act. But he was dynamic and he was outgoing and so personality. And I would say he worked hard. He scheduled, he had a routine. He was here at 7. He was here at 7:30, 8 o'clock. He was almost robotic about it. He was so successful. And he followed through. He never forgot. He kept notes. At that time, he had a little handheld microphone. He would make notes at the end of the day. He would listen to the notes, write them down. He followed through and he was consistent. I think another thing is we don't really talk about is consistency in a salesperson. Do you show up? Do you learn? Are you consistent at your job, your details, your hard work, your customers? Do they, when they call and ask about you, or I can count on him, he's always there. He finds that he solves problems for me. He makes it easy to do business with. I think it's that way. And then after the sale, do you send the little thank you cards? Are you there at the time of a delivery, a big, whatever it is, right? Whatever your profession requires, do you do every aspect of the sale? Or because like it is, we're going to gravitate to the ones that we think we enjoy the most. But it's all of it. That's the whole key. Selling is a big perspective. If you ever look, sometimes when companies are interviewing for people, they list everything they need in a salesperson, like, holy cow. But when I read it, I thought, we just do that naturally. But there's somebody who's not in sales who writes down everything that you're responsible for doing. And when you see the list and you realize that's what we get paid, what we do, because we generate. We had a meeting the other day saying, you guys sell so we can keep everybody else busy and help the process going. And it was almost a compliment. They should have just said, hey, thank you for what you do, right? but they just want to say how important it was to the whole function of the whole family. One part can't do without the other. I wouldn't want to sell an RV and then have to go out there and wash it and clean it and detail it and change the oil on top of selling it. So I appreciate all our detail crew and our washers and the guys that keep and the ladies that keep it spotless inside when we deliver it. That's a tough job. And, you know, we're washing RVs when it's cold, and we're washing RVs when it's hot and it's raining, and they're cleaning. Those things they're spotless when people come to pick them up. So you learn all the aspects of the job.
You do. And what comes easy to you, John, is your attitude, the energy that you bring, the positive outlook on life. What's easy for you?
You know, I enjoy what I do. I've enjoyed being a salesperson. Has been a blessing, whether it's tires, wheels, professional hair care products, Fords, Chevys, Mercedes, RVs, mattress firm. It's just been fun. I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy hearing people's stories. I enjoy hearing how people became successful, and I enjoy them doing business with me along the way. That has allowed me to make a very good income. Like I said before, I was a C+ student at best, but sales made me have an A wage. So I've always said my dad called me a peddler because he was a civil engineer, Berkeley grad, and he didn't think you could make a living being a salesperson. That was 40 years ago, correct? So you see today, Absolutely. There's a bunch of people who are successful, whether they're salespersons, motivators, speakers, whomever. So it's great. I mean, selling is a tough profession. I do think sometimes, Pat, that we, as an industry, we don't have as many mentors as we used to have. They kind of took away mid-level management. So, you don't have, we promised the coaching, and we promised that. Having said that, we have YouTube now, and we have books, and over the last decade, I probably read an average between 4 and 8 books a year. I really enjoy it. Before I just listened to them, now I read them. It's just, and then going into work, whether it's product knowledge or another author on another book, it's always evolving. I told you earlier, I'm using a video platform called BombBomb, which gives you a video, and I'm learning about not moving my head too much as I'm doing now, and not making funny expressions and faces, just becoming more professional about delivering, because we're going to send out 1.4 trillion emails, and how do you get yours opened? So, and then the industry is evolving. I know sometimes we change the names. I first started, it was a quota. Somebody said, oh, quota's too hard. Let's make it a goal. And then somebody said, oh, goal, let's make it a target. Oh, that sounds like shooting. So they changed the name. The concept is still the same. As a salesperson, you have to go out there and you have to produce. You have to deliver, and you have to, and I would say this, if I was a young salesperson, the best advice I would give you is make sure you say everything you need to say before you leave the sales call, because there'll be the things that you forget to say when you're driving away that you wish you would have said. And it's never what you say, it's how you say it. So you build enough good relationships. Hey, Pat, there's one thing I'm missing. What's holding you back? Whatever the closing or opening question is, to get somebody to say why they can't make a decision.
Exactly. And you, to bring something to light there, you said that you have to differentiate yourself from the 40 million other reps that are out there trying to sell something. Everybody uses email, everybody leaves voicemail messages, a lot of them send out cards. But when you start thinking outside the box, when you're talking about BonBon and Vimeo and all the video messaging that's going on, you have to understand, and this again comes to knowing your environment, knowing your current status in the world and with the industry as a whole. People don't have a lot of time to read emails. They don't have a lot of time to look at industry news. They want to hear it very quickly. And those are some new, video messaging is important because it does get your message out, and it's new. And not many people in our industry feel comfortable with doing that. And you have to step outside that box, right?
Well, you have to, and you have to realize that you can work on perfecting what you do. It's never going to be perfect the first time. So I don't know if that holds some people back. I'm not very good. That's okay. This would be the time to practice. This is the time to use that line that you've been always wanting to use, that you're afraid to use. It's the time. I mean, I look here and I go, man, I need to get 50 pounds off me, right? You start to look, and so you're a little more reluctant, but it is what it is. And so you got to move forward. And I call it the terror barrier. There's that fear factor that we're afraid to push through. And, everything you want is on the other side of fear. Fear holds people back. Tony Robbins said it best: false evidence appearing real. I learned that in my early 30s. I walked on the fire walk with Tony Robbins, and it changed my whole perspective. A couple of years later, I opened a business. I realized that if you win, you're successful, but along the way, you're winning every time because you're learning something new and you're improving, getting better.
Right.
It's kind of exciting. I mean, if people would take the time to invest in themselves, and you're a good, that Jordan Belfort, he said something I thought was interesting. He said, when you quit lying to yourself and BSing yourself, you're going to be a lot better. And what does that mean? That means some of the things we say to ourselves, well, that person wasn't going to buy anyway. Well, did we do everything we could to know that? Are we saying that just to make ourselves feel better? When you're honest with yourself, and we all are the best evaluators of ourselves, what could we do to get better? For example, you and I are Toastmasters. We do that because we looked at somebody one time and said, hey, we're better than that person. Then that person got really good. And we said, how did you get so good? Toastmasters. The next week I was in a club. I made the commitment to learn to be a better speaker, to be aware of everything. And BombBomb has a little class that you go through that's free, that you go through to learn how to be kind of an actor, how to look for your expressions on your face. How's your lighting? How's your speaker system? So when you can deliver the best email, short, keep it simple. It's evolving, and it's more exciting today than it was 25, 30 years ago for me. It's fun. You realize how important salespeople are to a company. If everybody was doing it, everybody would do it. But I can tell you right now, all you have to do is go to Indeed and see how many sales jobs are open. There's a ton.
Exactly. And how do you convince people that? How do you talk to maybe your cohorts and other people you come into? You get face to face with. How do you convince them you have to be proactive? You can't be stuck to where we were, pre-COVID.
Yeah.
The world has changed.
And it's hard to get people out of that mindset. I try to help a couple of people on the floor because I have an office and I have the internet. So I say, when it's slow, it's up to you to determine what you want to do. Do you want to look at YouTube videos of product knowledge, new RVs coming out, or do you want to look at, say, cooking show? And then I'll go to their computer, and everybody has a CRM, and I'll say, well, show me what you've done. And they have a running total of how many phone calls they've made for the month. And that day they'll have them posted emails, text messages, videos. And I'll say, for the whole month, you've only sent out 15 emails. For the whole month, you've only made 20 calls. How many people do you have in your system? You have 240. You've only sent 15 texts out for the whole month. I try to do 50 emails, 50 phone calls, and 50 texts. Now I have 1,100 people in my bucket, but it's still getting people. And I'll go out there 2 or 3 times to the point where if they're not improving, I just figure it's not the right time, because I'm not going to force somebody to want to be better. I want them to want it. And so that leads into the whole thing about not really helping somebody until they ask you a question. You go, oh, that's a question I used to ask. I think that person might be open to some coaching. And you've got to give them little bits. And it always has to be over the 1, 2, 3. We always go back to the basics, 1, 2, 3. Conceptual selling or conceptual, that's down the road. And that's for somebody who's made a commitment and is in the industry that you're in and willing to do it for 30 years.
Right. And in your industry, when, so you make that, you do the dial-ups, you get the customer in via email or, person call or, on the phone, and they come into the lot. What typically stalls a deal for you after you've done all that research and you've talked to the customer? What usually stalls
You got to have a couple things. You have, on the videos, the Class B vans are a good example of, 20 feet sometimes looks like 50. Right. And sometimes it looks like it's 20 feet wide when it's only 9.5 or 10 feet wide. So a husband and wife will get in there and they'll look around. And they're like, this is claustrophobic, or one will be on board and one won't be on board. I used to always joke and tease, once I built a good relationship, spend 2 or 3 hours, and we can't, it's like anything else. They'll come in and say, we're thinking about one of those Mercedes Sprinter chassis. Let's use an example, the Winnebago Rebel. Well, it's small, it's 20 feet. Well, the husband was thinking maybe something still on a Mercedes Sprinter chassis, maybe a Class C View. Well, then they go over there, and then they have now, we're gone to 24 feet, 10 inches, a little longer, a little taller, a little bigger. And I used to say, well, it sounds like, I'm an RV salesperson. Sounds like you guys need a marriage counselor, right? And they laugh and they joke, right? Because they're clearly not on the same page, or they didn't realize they're so expensive, right? When you first get there and you walk down the aisle and you see a Class A motorhome for $425,000, or you see a Dodge, Class B van for $119,000. At first, you don't know if they have lithium batteries, what the generator, what the fuel capacity is, if it all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive. And so you sit there and you're like, oh, I didn't realize these were that expensive. So there can be a lot of information that you kind of have to funnel down. And it's very seldom is it a first-time visit purchase unless somebody is very specific and had RVs before and know exactly what they want.
Right. In B2C, when you're dealing with the consumer, you usually have the decision maker or two in front of you. What happens? How do you get that significant other who might be way off the thinking of what they want inside that RV, to match up with the other person? Does it ever happen? Does it go opposite?
Oh, yeah.
Does it go...
So you can spend 4 or 5 hours with folks. So once you land them on something where they're sitting inside, then you take it outside and you take it for a test drive. Then you park somewhere and you put the jacks down and you expand it out. You put the awning out, you open up the windows if the weather is good, and you let them see, and you start to talk about where might be your first trip. John, we love to go to the beach. Can you imagine the ocean out there? And then they start seeing themselves and they start experiencing that. And when we take it on a small test drive, it's a lot easier than they thought it would be. It's not as difficult. And then there's a learning process. How do I turn the generator on? How do I get the slides out? How do I turn the heater on, the air conditioner on? And over, of course, the last couple of years, technology has gotten easier and far better use for people to be able to use it.
You're right.
So it's hard to get everybody. So you got to go through that process. You got to get them online. You got to get them committed. And then what happens is I always say this, is there anything about this RV that you don't like? Cabinetry color looks okay, because we have farmhouse look, we have the dark walnut, the light. How many people you're going to bring? I mean, on a regular basis, not just on occasion. We'll have the grandchildren, whatever it may be. Is there anything you don't like? No, I love everything. Then you just move forward. Sounds like we found the right one. Let me get some paperwork home. And it's a 2-part process. So we do the paperwork, and then we set a time for delivery, which it can be something like 2 or 3 days later. They get an hour orientation with a service tech who goes through the whole RV. And when they give the thumbs up, at that time, we do the final paperwork and they take delivery of it. So it's a 2-part process. So that one part, people could have a change of heart. And sometimes that happens. People wake up the next morning and go like, did we just spend $225,000 on an RV? They get scared. They get the terror berry comes in, right? And then they're not sure. But it's just every industry and every product that you sell has some kind of nuances that alter and change. And as a salesperson of many different products, you find just to navigate through that. And I really want to say this, Pat. I want to tell salespeople, if a company has a process, learn the process. Don't reinvent it. Become a student of it, because it's going to be process, people, or product, or process, product, and people. They're always the same 3. Learn the company, become the master of it, and then product or people, whatever you put second or third. But don't reinvent it. They've spent time, and our company's been in business 50 years, a family-owned business. When they said, this is our process, I said, good, I'm in. I'll learn it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to your initial point, and it's so important. Attitude, mindset, the mindset and the curiosity that you have and the confidence that you bring, and the, putting that all together makes that rep, that differentiates you from everybody else in the industry. And you made some really good points on that. Very interesting conversation. I'm glad I had you back, John.
Thanks, Pat, for having me.
You're always fun and always delightful. If people want to get a hold of you and follow you and contact you, what's the best way of getting a hold of you?
Well, just call me on my cell, 916-804-9679. I like phone calls still, or you can text me, or you can always reach me on my email at johnnymac175@yahoo.com. That's Johnny Mac 175. And I want to just say in closing, keep a list, make a list every day, have a plan, and always have a neutral mind with a positive expectation. You'll be surprised where you go. You'll be surprised what will happen. And it'll make you not buy into the expectation until it happens, but you'll do everything in the process to make it happen. So just remember, selling is a noble profession. It allows a C+ student to make an A wage and a good life. And you remember, you're helping everybody.
Thank you, John.